At approximately 4 o'clock in the afternoon on July 4th, 2026, a teenage caller reached a private towing company from the west end of Horn Island, Mississippi. There was panic in his voice. The boat's bilge pump had reportedly stopped working. Water was entering the vessel, and, according to the caller, the boat was going down. Then the dispatcher asked a simple question. Is everyone on board and in good health? The response came back. Yeah, everyone is on board. 31 minutes later, GPS records show the boat leaving Horn Island. By 6:06 p.m., it was back at the dock. Nolan Wells' phone made it back to the mainland. His car keys made it back. The boat made it back. His friends made it back. But Nolan did not. Hours passed before his mother learned that something was wrong. And 2 mornings later, a National Park Service ranger found Nolan's body in the water near the northwestern tip of the same island. But here is the detail that changes everything. Even after a second, independent autopsy, Nolan's cause of death, manner of death, and exact date of death remained undetermined. So, what happened during the missing hours between the final confirmed sighting and the discovery of his body? Was this a tragic accident caused by confusion, water, and one terrible assumption? Or is there a critical piece of the timeline that the public still hasn't been told? Stay with me until the end, because we're going to examine the phone, the boat's exact GPS movements, the conflicting accounts, and 7 unanswered forensic questions that could determine what really happened to Nolan Wells. Before we begin, this needs to be made absolutely clear. As of July 26, 2026, no one has been publicly charged in connection with Nolan's death. There's been no official finding of homicide, and the publicly available evidence does not prove that any named individual harmed him. This video will separate confirmed facts from family claims, public witness accounts, and unverified online speculation. The goal is not to conduct a trial in the comment section. The goal is to ask the questions that the evidence itself demands. Before Nolan became the center of a national mystery, he was an 18-year-old son, brother, friend, and college athlete from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Nolan played wide receiver for Southwest Mississippi Community College. His official roster listed him at 6'1" and 185 pounds. To his parents, however, he was much more than a football player. His mother described him as an incredibly kind person who loved people. His father remembered him as the funniest child in their family. On July 3rd, the night before the trip, Nolan reportedly cooked dinner for his parents. Before leaving to spend the night at a friend's house, he hugged his mother, kissed her, and told her that he loved her. It was the last time she would see her son alive. The following morning, Nolan left for what should have been a normal Independence Day celebration with friends. Within approximately 48 hours, his family would be identifying his body. To understand this case, you need to understand Horn Island. Horn Island is an undeveloped barrier island off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It is accessible only by private boat. There are no permanent staff members, no drinking water, no shelter, no public facilities, and no reliable communication system. That isolation is part of the island's attraction. But it also creates the perfect conditions for confusion. There are no street cameras following someone's movements. No security footage covering the beach. Cell service can be unreliable. Boats arrive and leave independently. People move between groups, swim in the water, and sometimes return to the mainland on a different vessel from the one that brought them. And on July 4th, the western end of the island was crowded with holiday visitors. That creates a strange contradiction. There may have been hundreds of potential witnesses, yet each person may have seen only a small fragment of the day. A crowded beach does not guarantee that someone witnessed Nolan's final moments. But it does increase the possibility that somewhere on someone's phone, there is a photograph or video containing a detail nobody noticed at the time. According to GPS data obtained from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the boat carrying Nolan left a private dock in the Ocean Springs area at approximately 9:56 that morning. It arrived at Horn Island at approximately 11:14. Photographs reportedly taken that day show Nolan smiling with friends. Nothing visible in those images suggests that within a few hours, he would disappear. According to the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, Nolan was last seen near the island at approximately 3 p.m. But even that time has become complicated. One of Nolan's close friends, who arrived on a different boat, publicly said he saw Nolan at around 4 p.m. Meanwhile, other claims circulating online place him in different locations and at later times, but many of those claims remain unverified. And in a case like this, 1 hour is not a minor discrepancy. If the final reliable sighting was at 3 p.m., investigators have one timeline. If someone can prove Nolan was alive at 4:30 or later, they have an entirely different timeline. The question is not simply, who remembers seeing him? The question is, who has an original photograph, video, message, or timestamp that can prove it? At around 4 p.m., the situation changed. A teenager aboard the boat contacted Sea Tow and reported that the bilge pump had stopped functioning. A bilge pump removes unwanted water from inside a boat. Without it, rising water can create a serious emergency. The caller said the boat was sinking. During the call, the dispatcher asked whether everyone aboard was in good health. The caller said everyone was on board. He later indicated that approximately 7 people were aboard the vessel. Those words have received intense attention online, but they must be interpreted carefully. Everyone is on board could simply mean every person currently traveling on the distressed boat was accounted for. It does not automatically prove that the caller was claiming Nolan was present. But it raises an important question. Did the dispatcher know how many people had originally traveled to the island on that boat? Was a passenger count performed before departure? And did anyone physically confirm Nolan's location when the boat pulled away? Sea Tow ultimately did not provide the tow. The vessel reportedly received help from another boat. GPS records indicate that it left Horn Island at 4:31 p.m., traveled at slow speed while being towed for approximately 2.75 miles, and then resumed normal operation at approximately 34 knots. The boat entered Fort Bayou at around 5:52 p.m. and arrived back at the dock at approximately 6:06. Later that evening, it was taken to the Fort Bayou boat launch, removed from the water, and transported overland to its owner's home. The GPS data can tell investigators where the boat went. But GPS cannot explain the human decision that occurred before it left. Because according to some friends, Nolan chose not to board. They said he wanted to remain with a young woman and believed he could return with another group. According to the family's attorney, however, the young woman's account was different. She reportedly believed Nolan would return on the boat with his original group. That is the central conflict. One side believed Nolan had chosen another ride. The other reportedly believed Nolan was leaving with his friends. If both groups assumed the other was responsible for getting him home, Nolan could have been left behind through a devastating failure of communication. But if someone watched Nolan board a boat or saw him after the original vessel left, that witness could completely change the case. At 4:31 p.m., where exactly was Nolan Wells? That may be the most important unanswered question in the entire timeline. Nolan did not return to the mainland, but his phone did. At around 11 p.m., a friend contacted the Coast Guard concerning Nolan. At approximately 11:07, Nolan's mother received a call informing her that something was wrong. She began checking location applications. According to Nolan's mother, one application appeared to show one location while Life 360 indicated that his phone was already back on the mainland. That meant the phone was not tracking Nolan. It was tracking the people who had returned without him. The phone was eventually recovered from a location connected to his friends. His car keys were also on the mainland, and his car remained at the property where he had stayed the previous night. The family has said that when the phone was examined, certain messages and social media activity appeared to be missing. Friends have publicly denied accessing the phone or deleting anything. At this point, there is no publicly released forensic finding proving that anyone intentionally deleted material from Nolan's device. Snapchat content can disappear automatically, depending on account settings. A lack of posts could also mean Nolan simply did not record anything that day. But those possibilities cannot be assumed either. A forensic examination could potentially determine when the phone was last unlocked, which applications were accessed, whether data was manually removed, and which accounts communicated during the crucial hours. Nolan's phone may not reveal where Nolan was after he became separated from it. But it could reveal when his friends first realized he was missing. It could establish who contacted whom. and it could show whether the public timeline matches the private digital timeline. The family's legal team and local authorities have agreed to inspect the phone, while the FBI has assisted with digital evidence collected in the investigation. Nolan's mother reportedly contacted the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources shortly before midnight. By the morning of July 5th, Nolan's father and former football coach were already traveling to Horn Island to search. Multiple agencies eventually became involved, including the Jackson County Sheriff's Office, National Park Service, Coast Guard, Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, local fire services, and private volunteers. But the search faced difficulties. Some drone flights experienced technical problems. Another flight ended after heat reportedly caused a battery issue. Sonar searches were later affected by adverse weather. Then, at approximately 8:45 on the morning of July 6th, authorities received a report that a body had been found near the northwestern tip of Horn Island. A National Park Service ranger had discovered Nolan in the water, the same area that had been filled with boats. Music and 4th of July celebrations had now become a death scene. His disappearance was over. The greater mystery was only beginning. As the case spread online, one video became a major source of speculation. It appeared to capture an altercation near the boats. Voices could be heard yelling, and some people believed one of those voices belonged to Nolan. The family's attorney initially discussed the possibility that Nolan could be heard demanding his phone. But one of Nolan's friends later appeared publicly and said the yelling voice was his, not Nolan's. He said the conflict shown in the video involved him and another person, and that Nolan was not part of that fight. The sheriff's office has not publicly confirmed that Nolan participated in a physical altercation. This is where social media becomes dangerous. A blurry figure receives a red circle. A distant voice is identified by someone who never met the person. An anonymous account posts a claim. And within hours, uncertainty becomes proof. Investigators do not need compressed reposts with added arrows, music, and captions. They need original files containing metadata, the exact creation time, and the complete footage before and after the viral clip. Authorities have also warned about misinformation, while local reporting has documented AI-generated images and videos circulating around the case. False evidence does not help Nolan. It wastes investigators' time, harms innocent people, and makes the real evidence harder to find. The Mississippi State Medical Examiner conducted an initial autopsy on July 7th. That report has not been publicly released and is expected to remain withheld while the case proceeds toward grand jury review. The family then commissioned an independent examination in Washington, D.C. On July 22nd, attorney Ben Crump announced the preliminary findings. The cause of death was undetermined. The manner of death was undetermined. Even the precise date of death remained unknown. The independent examination found no skull fractures and no deep tissue injuries. However, the pathologist identified a large area of red discoloration in the soft tissue at the back of Nolan's head. The significance of that discoloration could not be determined. That does not prove Nolan suffered a fatal blow. But it also could not be fully explained from the material available to the independent pathologist. There was another major limitation. Because the state had already conducted its autopsy, Nolan's organs and certain neck structures were not returned with his body for the second examination. Removing and retaining organs for testing is not, by itself, unusual during an autopsy. However, their absence limited what the second pathologist could determine. He could not examine the lungs and airway to determine whether water was present. He could not fully evaluate the neck for possible injury. Decomposition also made it difficult to determine whether Nolan had sustained certain bruises or abrasions. The independent pathologist was therefore unable to determine whether Nolan was conscious or unconscious when he entered the water, or whether he entered voluntarily or through some outside event. The preliminary report identified 7 critical questions. What circumstances caused Nolan to enter the water? What position was his body in when found? Was water present in his airway? Was there evidence of injury to his neck? Was there bleeding inside his skull? What was inside his stomach? And what will the toxicology results reveal? Those 7 questions are more important than every anonymous theory on social media. Because undetermined does not mean homicide, and it does not mean accidental drowning. It means the evidence currently available to that pathologist was insufficient to choose either conclusion with medical certainty. At this stage, the publicly available evidence leaves three broad possibilities. Possibility 1. A tragic accident. Nolan may have remained on the island believing he had another ride. At some point, he could have entered the water and encountered trouble. Swimming ability does not make someone invulnerable to currents, exhaustion, intoxication, a sudden medical problem, or an unseen injury. If no one realized he was in danger, he may have disappeared while people were distracted by the boat emergency and preparations to leave. This possibility remains open. But the independent autopsy did not medically confirm accidental drowning. Hashtag possibility 2, a catastrophic chain of assumptions. The original group may have believed Nolan was leaving with another boat. The young woman's group may have believed Nolan was returning with his original friends. Other people may have assumed one of the many vessels still near the island would take him home. Nobody intended to leave him without transportation, but nobody personally confirmed his plan. In this scenario, the mystery begins not with a criminal act, but with one sentence repeated by different groups. I thought he was with them. Hashtag possibility 3, an event not yet established publicly. It remains possible that Nolan experienced an altercation, injury, or some other event that has not been revealed in the public record. But possibility is not proof. The undetermined autopsy and conflicting witness accounts justify continued investigation. They do not justify accusing a specific friend, witness, or young woman of murder. Only verified evidence can take the case in that direction. By July 15th, the sheriff said investigators had interviewed more than 60 witnesses. The FBI was assisting with digital evidence, and the completed investigation was expected to be presented to a grand jury. A reward totaling $125,000 has also been offered for information leading to an arrest and conviction. But the case may not be solved by the loudest person online. It may be solved by one quiet piece of evidence. An original photograph with an exact timestamp. A complete video showing what happened before and after the viral clip. The GPS track from another boat. A text message sent during the missing hours. A record showing when Nolan's phone was last accessed. A reliable sighting after 4:31 p.m. Toxicology results. A scientific drift analysis using currents, wind, tides, and the body's recovery location. Or a witness who has remained silent, not because that person caused Nolan's death, but because they did not initially understand the importance of what they saw. The truth may already exist. The problem is separating it from rumor. Nolan Wells went to Horn Island with his phone, his friends, and his future ahead of him. The boat returned. The phone returned. The keys returned. But Nolan was found 2 mornings later in the water. Today, the most honest answer is also the most difficult. We still do not know exactly how he died. So, I want you to focus on evidence, not personalities and not online rumors. Which missing piece do you believe is most important? If you believe the digital evidence from Nolan's phone is the key, comment. Phone. If you believe investigators must establish the final verified sighting between 3 and 6 p.m., comment.
Timeline.
And if you believe the state autopsy, toxicology, and water current analysis will determine the truth, comment. Forensics. Please keep the discussion respectful. Do not threaten, harass, or accuse private individuals without evidence. Because Nolan's family does not need another internet rumor. They need one thing: the truth about what happened on Horn Island. Until that truth is established, the Nolan Wells case remains open in the court of public questions, but the final answer must come from evidence.